Welcome to 5 and 5 from the One-Stop Co-op Shop, where I discuss 5 key elements of a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and today I'm looking at a bit of an oldie, well, not really that old, but old by game standards, The Seventh Continent. And no disclaimer here, I borrowed my friend Jerry's copy. I was a big fan of the follow-up game to The Seventh Continent, The Seventh Citadel, when I did a Kickstarter preview, but how do I feel about the OG game? Let's find out and get to the list. For my number 5, I'm going to start with a mix, which is focused on the cooperative play. So if you're going to play this game solo, you can just ignore this one. On the positive side, the game offers a lot of interaction for the 2 to 4 players who are cooperating. You can use items and cards in your hand to help each other out. You can kind of divide and conquer, exploring in different directions, and they give you a discount if you move back to where another character is. You can come back together when needed. But that's the part where this falls to a mix and could be weird for some groups. When you split up, you lose the ability to help each other with items and cards. And if one character has a lot to do in their direction and another doesn't have that much because you can kind of divide the turns up however you want, you might feel like you have some downtime. But on the other hand, if the different players stay together, then you have one action deck. You can kind of share everything with each other. It might feel like you're sort of playing a solo game together. So it can just be a little bit wonky, just something to be aware of when you're going to play co-op. And at my number 4, I have a straight up con, which is dealing with all of the cards in the game. So especially with the expansions, this game has well over 1,000 cards, and they have a pretty good divider system where everything's within these little sets of 50 or more. But that doesn't change the fact that taking the time to deal with all this stuff just builds up when you track down card 254 and card 378, and then when you have to return it all at the end of a session, and then when you have to set it back up again later. Now, don't get me wrong, having all these cards pays dividends in other parts of the game. We'll get to those in a second. And the organization system they have is probably the best they could have done, but that doesn't mean it's not annoying. And I also have a con at number 3, and that's the potential grindiness in the game and how you have to repeat things. So the player's life force is represented by this action deck, and pretty much everything you do in the game is going to mill through that. And if all the cards have been discarded, then you're in danger of dying and losing the game at any time. And the main way to keep that loss away is to hunt, and hunting over and over again, and moving back to a hunting spot to hunt some more when things aren't going so well and you're running out of cards can be such a drag and such a grind. But that's not the worst grind, oh no, because they expect, and it's definitely true, that for most of the quests in the game, you'll have to die in the game 3 or 4 or 5 times to figure out what you're actually doing to get lucky enough to win. And that means even though you'll be more efficient with it, potentially repeating lots of content. So it can be a bit of a drag either way. Although to that second point, I do want to note that they have an easy mode in the base game, and they added an infinite mode in the expansion, which you can also port back pretty easily. So if you never want to die and repeat the whole thing, there are options for you, but that's not going to change the whole food issue. But let's get to some goodness, because there is a lot here. My number 2 is a full-on pro, and that's how they do action checks. So I already mentioned the action deck being your life force, but the way they do these checks is really interesting. For most of them, you can draw as many cards as you want, and each card has the chance of giving you 1 or more successes. But of course, the more cards you draw, the lower your deck gets. So it's kind of like this really tense push your luck system, and add on to that the awesome mitigation you can have in the cards in your hand and the items you build. And after every test, you get to take one of the cards that you drew and put it into somebody's hand to give you cool options in the future. I just love this whole system. Yes, it can be incredibly frustrating when you put all your resources into some fight with a giant bear and you just come up short, but I think that matches the excitement and desperation of the setting and the game, so even though it can be frustrating, I think it's still perfect for the system. And finally, we have another pro at number 1, the biggie, and that is the sense of exploration and learning this crazy alien continent. Because as you play through and explore more, you'll get a sense for where things are, you'll get a sense for where it's more dangerous and less dangerous, and even though you might be pursuing one specific curse, you'll see clues and ideas and objects that match other ones, so you kind of feel like you learn things as you play more. Now, this does require playing a bunch. The first time you play, you might feel totally lost, go in the wrong direction. It can be frustrating, but if you're the type of person who in video games or board games likes to explore, likes to experience things, likes to dig deep, this will reward you if you put the time in. So overall, Seventh Continent is a bit of a weird one for me. When I first played it, I did get frustrated with bad skill checks, with going the wrong way, but the more I've played it over the years, the more I've been enthralled with it, and I hadn't played it in over a year, and I just started playing it again, and I've been enjoying it so much. I forgot how great it could be. I forgot how fun it could be to have different characters and kind of work with them together. So if you haven't played this one yet, this is definitely a big recommend if you like adventure games, if you like senses of exploration, if you're the kind of person who used to play big overworld RPGs and like map the terrain. You might also want to check this one out if you like desperate survival games, things like Robinson Crusoe. But on the other hand, you might want to avoid this one if you want quick games. You're looking at 10 to 20 hours on average to solve a given curse. And also if the idea of organizing all those cards puts you off, if you're worried about the skill checks, having bad luck, and of course, unless you play with the endless lives rule, you might want to avoid this one if you don't want to die and go through a bunch of stuff again. And I did a new playthrough, just a partial one, to show off the hot air balloon expansion. Not too many spoilers, just a little taste of things. So click in the video that just popped up if you want to check it out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next stop.